and we will get started. Okay. All right, you guys, welcome to our Body Electric weekly webinar. We're doing this one a little bit earlier in the night than usual, so thank you guys so much for hopping on here early. I know there will be several people taking advantage of the recording, but my goal for tonight is to walk us through a writing workshop. This was something that a couple of coaches had asked about after we had listened to Jennifer Tunney last week, and at the end of Jennifer Tunney's presentation on courage and going all in with the business. She, I think I shouted her out for her social brand lately and how I was loving her posts. And then that sort of evolved into, hey, how can you help us write better posts? So that's the why behind this webinar tonight. But like I just said to the girls, if you have a notebook handy, that'll be super helpful. But I'm kind of like intertwining a little bit of training and an interactive workshop. So I'm going to have you actually putting pen to paper or typing things out tonight and hopefully responding to some questions that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick. Yeah. I just got my computer back from Apple. They had it for 3 weeks. Thankfully, nothing was lost. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. A couple quick announcements. We do have a new Fix group starting on June 3rd. I have a calendar for June ready to share with the team, but I'm waiting to share that probably until after Memorial Day. But just so you know, we will be continuing on with Portion Fix. And then, of course, next Tuesday night, we have our Finding Fulfillment event for May. Last but not least, some of you guys have been invited to my house on June 8th for a stand-up paddleboard yoga event, which is super fun. I've got the boards rented. I've got the yoga instructor. Even have a really cool like personal development game that we'll be doing with Amy Snow, our resident life coach. I just need to know if you're going to be there. So if you were invited to this event, please let me know. Please give me your RSVP as soon as you can. Okay, so I want to make sure we maximize as much of our time as we can. And some of you guys who've been around for a while have heard me talk about my creative writing background. I was a creative writing and communications double major in college. And my journey with writing started when I was probably around 11 or 12 years old. The first I can remember realizing that I had a writing ability was when my dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was 12 years old and given 2 weeks to live. And so I went through a really interesting phase of my life, like that sort of already weird age where you're sort of a tween, was made even weirder by that experience and by having to live with my grandparents and sort of a pseudo mom for a few months while my parents underwent bone marrow transplants and all kinds of crazy things. So during that time of my life, I think that writing was introduced to me and it became my outlet. So for me, writing is a very therapeutic thing. It started when I was, like I said, 11 or 12 years old when I went through that experience. It was something that my grandma had encouraged me to do. And of course, nobody's really a good writer when they're 11 or 12, right? Just like anything else. And so I remember being on airplane flights to my grandma's house in Florida and writing on the plane and, just it was an outlet for me. And so when I was in the 7th and 8th grade, I was put into a gifted and talented writing program at my school. And I really feel like, as you guys know, I had a teacher at that age who was a huge influence for me. She really helped bring out my creativity. But it was my first experience ever being in sort of a focused class or something having to do with writing. And since that time, I've probably written thousands of pages worth of papers, thousands of stories, especially being a writing major in college, right? It was just constant short stories, constant writing. So it's funny to me because when people say, gosh, you have such a gift with words, or you're such a great writer and your social media posts are so spot on, I kind of have to laugh because this started for me when I was like 11 or 12 years old. Like the writing thing is a skill that you can develop. And while there might be a little bit of natural talent involved for some people, you can get better at it. I actually know several people who have invested, even as coaches, Lindsay Caterino being one. You can check out her blog. She never had any sort of writing background at all and decided it was a skill set that she wanted to improve. So just like everything in this business, right? There's multiple skill sets, and writing is one of them. Like being able to connect with your audience and being able to connect with the people that we're marketing to is something that you'll want to work on. So I'm excited to lead you through this. And I feel like I do have the credentials to lead you through a writing workshop. You'll never see me lead a webinar on how to do cold invites, because I don't do cold invites. So there are certain things that I won't do, but there are certain things that I do feel like I'm in my element with, and this is one of them. So I actually want to kick this off by taking it back to my 7th and 8th grade gifted and talented writing experience, which some of you guys have heard me talk about, which I was sat down in class the very first day of school, and the teacher, Mrs. Garrett, said, she was actually like 4 feet tall, super short chick, gymnastics teacher. I can picture her still to this day. And she put a bowl of moldy grapes. So today on Google, I searched bowl of moldy grapes, and I couldn't find anything that didn't look like it might make you puke. It was so nasty. Thanks, Google Images, for leaving those images in my mind permanently. So I figured, let's just go with grapes. Like, they don't need to be moldy. But basically, she put a bowl of grapes in the middle of, we were seated in sort of a horseshoe shape, and she put them there, and she said, I want you to spend the entire 52-minute class writing about this bowl of grapes. You can't talk to anybody else in the class. No, there's no like interaction here, just you, pen and paper, writing about the grapes. And so that was my very first experience with creative writing. And that same exact lesson has just repeated itself over every creative writing class I took. It was a constant theme. So what I thought we'd do tonight, because I know a lot of you, I've been on these types of calls before where you're like, I just listened to your entire hour call and I just could not get in the right mindset, right? And so I want to make sure that we get in the right mindset from the beginning. So I want to take probably like 7 or 8 minutes here for you guys to write about this bowl of grapes. And I realize it has nothing to do with being a Beachbody coach. It has nothing to do, I'm not asking you to sell these grapes to anybody and to write a pitch. I just want you to put pen to paper, and I want you to tell me, I want you to give me a sensory experience about these grapes. What do they look like? What do they taste like? Get creative with it, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to set a timer here. I'm going to do the exact same thing, and we will reconvene here in a few minutes. So ready, set, go. All right. Okay, so because the end goal isn't for you to make a post tonight about this bowl of grapes, we're gonna go ahead and move on so that we can make sure we can get everything in here. But hopefully the idea here is for you to just kind of get into a creative mindset, right? And I know that something we've talked about in mastermind groups and such is really just creating an environment for you to be creative and to really kind of get into a flow, right? For me, it's being in my office, having a cup of coffee, having total isolation, like nobody in the room with me. That puts me into a creative state. Sometimes though, I have to do this sort of thing. I have to put pen to paper, or I have to start thinking this way and be descriptive about something really mundane to get myself ready to make a post. A few weeks ago, I made a post on my social about adoption, and it was just on my heart to share. And so I literally had to block everything else out. Like Chris and I were right in the middle of a TV show. I had to like leave the room. I was in that creative flow. So getting centered in that creative flow sometimes is important when we're wanting to make an emotionally connecting post. So let's go through our workshop here, and I'm going to ask you guys to engage and interact with me so that we can make this the best experience possible. So I've broken this down into like 6 or 7 steps, and hopefully by the end of this, you now know how to go about making each and every one of your posts on social media. So the first thing I want to talk about is your avatar. And I toyed back and forth with whether or not I wanted to call it avatar or character. But regardless, we'll just go with avatar because that's sort of a marketing phrase. So your avatar is a person who embodies your perfect customer. So they're the person who all of this has been created for. So they're the person at the, on the other end of your product sale. So who is your ideal customer? And I hear all the time from coaches, like, I really struggle with my social media and I really struggle because I don't know who my avatar is. And I will tell you this, that like 99% of the time, the avatar is just you before you met Beachbody, right? So what I want to do is I want to just take a couple minutes. We're only going to take about 5-6 minutes for you guys to just write down who you were before this opportunity, right? So before you found Beachbody, what were you doing? Like literally, were you working full time? Like what areas did you struggle? What was your relationships like? Write down a little bit of a description about what your life looked like before you found a challenge group or before you found your coach. Okay. So I want you to write that down and just know moving forward that that is the avatar we're speaking of. So ready, set, go. Does anybody want to share their little jotted down bullet points or one of them of who their avatar is, aka who they were, who you were before you found Beachbody?
I can share. I was working full time. I was a new mom. I was always trying the newest or latest thing in fitness. I didn't know much about nutrition, but I was always trying to lose weight. So I counted calories. I didn't have very many friends except for those I worked with and those from high school. But I had thrived on, I always thrived on group. Holly, stop it. Thank you. On group exercise and like the community of the Y or a group class. And my exercise motto was always more, longer, longer, longer. That'll equal weight loss.
Okay. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Anybody else want to share?
I can share. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I didn't get as far in it because I'm a lot slower of a writer, but full-time job sucked the life from me. Long hours, late nights, early mornings, with next to no reward, encouragement, or praise. In pain emotionally, drowning myself in alcohol and drugs to numb said pain. But a smile on my face, the life of the party, the fun girl, and many girls wanted to be me without knowing the real me. And that's as far as I got.
Perfect. I love it. That's perfect description. Anybody else? You don't have to, just opening it up for if anybody's struggling, this just gives ideas here. I wrote down working full time, didn't know what I didn't know, was always a participant in high school sports, always team captain, vice president of all organizations, but didn't really see my potential in my full-time career. Like I didn't see that opportunity to lead in my full-time career. I craved growth, but I didn't realize that growth was up to me. No kids at the time. I craved tribe. I had no close friends. I was actually playing in a neighborhood bunco group of 50-plus-year-old women, dealing with headaches, chronic pain, lack of fulfillment. At the time, my only exercise was running on a treadmill, and I had zero knowledge of nutrition, was even serving like Ortega tacos on Tuesdays and Hamburger Helper on Wednesdays. So these are just some little tips, little pieces about me from circa 2009. Anybody else? That gives us a good idea, I think. Okay, so let's move on to number 2. Now we have to dive into what our avatar, so our former us, what do they want and or need, okay? So what did you want or need that influenced you to make the decision to move forward in a challenge group? So we're sort of skipping ahead a little bit and we'll come back, but we're identifying, right, the problems that your ideal customer could be up against. And let me just tell you that sometimes they aren't aware of the problem, right? You might not have been aware at the time, but now looking back, you can probably point to some things, right, that helped influence you to make the decision to move forward. So does anybody want to share like what for you made the decision to join a challenge group? Like what was sort of your solidifying moment to make that decision? Anybody want to share?
Community. I was already doing Beachbody programs for a very long time, and of course I'd only finished a few, so I really needed the community, and I don't feel like I really had a whole lot of friends outside of work, and I had just changed jobs. And so then when Abby reached out to me, I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to make connections, build community, and serve that part of my life that was clearly lacking. So
For me,
I don't know why all mine sound always so dramatic, but honestly, the first time I joined a group, it was prior to this team, but I had just lost one of my employees / friends to an OD that I partied with. And at the age of 30, after a DUI and living in my dad's basement, I honestly, my life not going down a very great path. So my friend actually gave me P90X, and that's when I started doing it. I actually didn't necessarily join a challenge group at that time. It was more he and I which was kind of like a small group. But then my first real, like legit, like rerun group was on our team, and that was post baby, less dramatic. But after a NICU stay is when I decided that I needed something else than newborn baby.
Okay. That's a super powerful story / two stories, Sarah. And I just want to say, I remember I sat down with Sarah. I don't want to like totally tangent this, but when Sarah and I sat down at Paradise Bakery several years ago to talk about her making the switch to our team and just being in a better environment than she was in, I remember her telling me, I think your words were even like something to the degree of like, I had always had unhealthy addictions, and I made the decision to swap the unhealthy addictions for healthy addictions, and P90X became her addiction, right? That's a powerful story, but I don't think I've ever seen that on your social. So that is, I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
It's something hard to share because I don't ever want to have like the sympathy thing, because that's not why I share it, and I don't know how to share it with a positive like spin.
Perfect.
So
and that's what you're going to learn in steps 3 through 7. So let's keep going.
Okay.
So
real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
To Sarah, to just hearing you say that you're living in a basement, like right now I'm living in a basement and it feels like I'm like kind of having a horrible life right now. So it's nice to hear the other people. It's nice to hear people's shitty stuff. And people will feel like sorry for you, and you just have to like let them feel sorry for you. That's okay. That's about them.
Right. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to make it so that it's not just, oh, poor me, here's the negative experience that I had, and how we can actually position, like we talked about last week, how we can actually position this avatar, this ideal customer, as the hero of our story, right? That's what we're getting at. Okay. So number 3, and like I said, I'm going to kind of intertwine a little bit of training mixed in through here too, but we need to be able to identify our avatar's problems, right? So like I said before, a lot of people aren't aware of their problem. Tonight I made a post on my social about what Ellery was having for dinner. I talk a lot about like toddler nutrition and kid eating, just because I'm really passionate about it, and it drives me crazy when people feed their kids McDonald's. Just a personal problem that I have. But I do that, right, because A, I'm passionate about it, and B, because I want to name the problem. A lot of people aren't aware, right? And so it's just like what I said before. If you don't know what you don't know, right, it's until someone names that issue, you're not aware of it yourself. So most of the rest of this content for the rest of this presentation I've gotten from Donald Miller with Storybrand podcast. I actually just signed up for his online course. So if this is something that you feel like you want to dive more into, I'm happy to work with you one-on-one with it, or you can take this course with me. But he has taught me so much about how to not just, because I feel like up until now in my Beachbody career, there have been millions of people that have tried to teach you how to tell your story or your mini stories, but there haven't been very many people who've been able to teach you how to tell your story in a way that matters, and in a way that actually helps you sell product and build your team and bring like-minded people on board. So that's what I'm hoping to get at. So basically he says, most people don't know their problem, and it's up to you to identify and name the problem for them and then agitate the problem. Okay, so he says this opens a story loop. The more you crank the problem open, the more magnetism there is towards your product and services. So while my post might be a little brash, bold, whatever, when I'm talking about parents who feed their kids McDonald's, my purpose there, my point there is to agitate a problem, to make someone on the other end feel like, oh gosh, I wasn't even aware this was a problem, right? I'm trying to create that sense of relationship there. So now, just because you're doing that, sometimes it's not accepted in the way that you're expecting, right? So I'm sure that at some point tonight, somebody will comment on my post and be like, oh, well, this is just how you choose to do it, and other moms can do what they want to do. There's always somebody that's going to come in and feel that resistance. But I always see that as that particular person's insecurity, and most likely I've sort of poked the bear, right? Like I've agitated an issue with them. So each time you share a post or a story and you name an agitated problem, keep it to just one problem. Okay, so every time you're telling a story on your social or you're making a post, it's very easy to talk about all the things, right? Like toddler nutrition and obesity in the world and, you know, whatever, like keto, whatever. But don't throw all those things into one post. So it's kind of like going back to the image of the grapes, right? When you guys had 7 or 8 minutes to write about the grapes, right? Not a big deal. If I would have given you 2 hours and I would have said, write about those grapes for 2 hours, you would have most likely gotten to a point where you were talking about every little specific detail about that bowl of grapes. And that's what I want you to focus your social content on. One small detail, one small problem, right? And get into the nitty gritty and detail of it so that you agitate that problem. So let's go ahead, and we've kind of already touched on some of it, but let's talk a little bit about our avatar's problems. Okay, so we've kind of already identified people missing, lacking community, missing or lacking fulfillment, right? Carrying extra weight, craving personal growth, but not understanding that it's on them to pursue. Okay, lots of different things at play here. Those are the different problems that we're up against. Now, do you guys have any that you want to add that you feel like not just that you hear from with customers, but maybe that you see with people? What do you think are the number one problems that we're up against as coaches, in addition to what I just said? Energy, feeling more energy.
For me, I think the biggest problem for myself was not knowing how or what to start. There's so many things out there that you've got like 1,000 choices.
Right, so where to start?
Exactly, where to start.
So basically the problem for the customer would be overwhelm.
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Anything else that I'm missing or that we could call out here?
I get all the time that like I can't be like you. And we've talked about this before, but I get that a lot, or that don't have the motivation.
So I would identify that as perfectionism. They think that you're doing everything 100% and they could never do that, or they think what you're doing is all time consuming and they don't have the time, right? You say lack of motivation. If a person tells you as a coach, those of you who are veteran coaches, if a customer or potential customer tells you that they lack motivation, what do we really know that that is? It's not really a lack of motivation, it's a lack of, I'm leading you. This is a leading question. Are they really lacking motivation, or are they just lacking the priority? Right? They haven't identified for themselves that this is a strong enough problem to make a priority. So usually when someone, by the way, this is a side note, when someone comments on my post and they say, I wish I had your motivation, I always respond back with, you don't need my motivation, you need my tools. Now here's why, because if they have the tools that I have, if they have Fixate, if they have a shake every day, even if they're not 100%, they're going to see progress, and they're going to start to learn about their body. They're going to start to learn how they are intended to feel, right? Which agitates their problem. Once they feel that problem agitated, they make better choices, right? Does that make sense? So they don't need motivation. They just need the tools. Okay. All right. So here we go. Quick training. So Donald Miller says that there are 3 levels that we're going to talk about tonight. So one is external, which means there's the physical thing that's in the avatar's way. So the physical object that's keeping them from XYZ. So example, the external problem being our avatar, Jane, my avatar, Jane, has 50 pounds to lose, right? She has 50 pounds to lose. That's the physical object in her way. But the internal, which is how that makes them feel, and the philosophical, which is what's wrong with the world that our product solves. So in other words, like Jane might not be aware that the ingredient labels are tricking her on her food, right? So the internal and the philosophical aspects of this is where the purchase choice will come from for Jane. So most marketers, according to Donald Miller, and I could not agree more, most marketers out there are identifying external issues in, for example, in their social content, right? Like, need to lose weight? Try this shake, right? External issue. People don't act on an external issue, they act on an internal feeling. So I think he gave the example. I'm trying to remember I think he talked about like mosquitoes or something about like he was talking about like an actual business service. And he said something about like, you know, if you say like, hey, you know, you have mosquitoes in your yard, we're a mosquito service, call 1-800 blah blah blah. He's like, it has been scientifically proven that there will be less phone calls and less action taken on the part of the customer than if the advertisement was geared more toward a feeling that mosquitoes, you know, hey, are you not wanting to head into the summer with hosting backyard barbecues and having to deal with mosquito bracelets and, you know, citronella candles and blah blah blah, give us a call, right? So they're identifying and naming a problem, they're agitating a problem, and they're using an internal feeling, right? They're getting somebody to think about, yeah, that would really suck, to get them to act. And that's what we want to do as coaches. We can't just identify weight loss as being an external problem that we can solve. We have to speak to our avatar's internal voice. Okay, so this means that we have to include emotional language in our marketing. Now, I have a whole separate training that we've done 100 times called Crafting Effective Facebook Posts. You can check that out in our webinar recordings on our website. That's a very detailed look at how to make your actual language more emotional in nature. But what I'm hoping we can do is kind of put pen to paper and kind of make some progress on this. I thought this was really interesting too. He says that people are actually more motivated to not, this was an example, to not lose the $10 that they already have than they are to make a new $10. So in other words, we're very protective. We're very fight or flight. We're very survival based. Okay, so this means that people are motivated more by what they have to lose. Or, for example, hey, you've got high blood pressure and high cholesterol. If your doctor tells you you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, you're going to die young, you're going to die early, right? You're going to act. See what I'm saying? The doctor is presenting you with what you're going to lose. And that motivates people more than saying, you really ought to start working out again because you're going to feel better. People aren't motivated by that. You see where I'm getting at? So people are more motivated about protecting what they have to lose than they are about what they have to gain. Okay, so step number 4, let's take just one problem that we identified, right? We talked about a lot of them. And let's craft a post or a story for your social using emotional language targeted to your former self, which is your avatar. Okay, this is just practice. You don't have to post it if you don't want to, but I want to make sure that we're actually putting this to good use. So knowing what you know, that people are motivated about what they have to lose as opposed to what they have to gain. You now know who your avatar is because it's the former you that you're talking to. And you now know that we have to somehow emotionally trigger this person with language, emotional language, to get them to identify that they have a problem. So you're agitating that problem for them. So I'm going to give you sorry, that's my alarm. I'm going to give you a few minutes here to start this post. Maybe it means you're writing down bullet points for a future post. Maybe it means you're ready to start diving into it. I even had the idea myself today to write a post like, Dear Old Me, right? Dear Old Me. This is what I wish I would have known. So I'm going to give you a few minutes here to actually jot some things down, and then we'll move on. see, I get carried away, and then it's like, crap, I gotta stop. Okay. So I didn't get finished, but did you guys make a little bit of progress, or at least express a little bit of something there on paper? Okay, perfect. All right, you can always come back to it later. Okay, so we're gonna sort of start to wrap it up here, but I love this part. This is where it sort of comes full circle. Hopefully will start to make sense. So in every story we tell, there is a hero, a guide, and a villain. Okay, just like think about your most recent like Avengers movie or whatever, right? Any movie you've seen, any story you've read, there's almost always a hero, a guide, and a villain. Our job as coaches is not to be the hero of our own story, which can get confusing because our vital behaviors surround being proof the products work. So a lot of coaches think that sharing that alone is positioning them like, I'm doing the vital behaviors, I'm sharing that I'm proof the products work, and my business isn't growing. But if you're just sharing that you're doing your workout and drinking your shake and doing your personal development, and you're not doing it in a way that presents you as the guide to teach others to do the same, then really you're the hero of your own story. That is why so many coaches plateau in the business, because they remain the hero of their own story as opposed to changing over to being the guide. So my example here, right, is like classic. Mr. Miyagi is the guide. That's what we're going after as coaches, is to be the guide of the story. So Donald Miller uses the language, let's identify who are the villains that we're fighting. So let's open this up. I want you to fill in the blank for me verbally, like unmute yourself and tell me. We save people from blank. Okay? You tell me, what do we save people from?
Chronic illness.
Chronic illness.
Themselves.
Loneliness. What else?
Themselves.
Themselves. Negative addictions. What else?
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem. What do you feel like you were saved from with Beachbody? Excess weight, right?
I don't know how to put this succinctly, but kind of like the lies of society, especially when it comes to nutrition, like what's healthy and knowing the difference between health food and what's branded as healthy.
So saved from persuasion, or saved from
Marketing.
Marketing, yeah. False marketing. Yeah. Saved from low energy.
Saved from being mediocre or being content with mediocre.
Yeah. Being average, being mediocre. Yeah. So hopefully you guys have been writing these down, but regardless, we have chronic illness, loneliness, yourselves, themselves, negative addiction, low self-esteem, excess weight, persuasion or false marketing, low energy, being average, being mediocre. Okay, that's enough for us to work with tonight. So those we've identified as just a few. We've shot those off pretty quick. So those are the villains that we save people from as their guide. Okay. Hopefully I want you, and I can create a document or an image to share too, but hopefully you have those written down, or you take some time to write those villains down, and know that when you're ready to sit down and create a social media post that truly emotionally connects, your job, right, is to be the guide of the story and to address one of these villains. Okay, I wanted to make sure, do you see how I did that for emphasis? I like slowed down for emphasis. Okay. Number 6, how can we start inviting people into our story so that they become the hero and we become the guide? Donald Miller says that we speak with empathy and authority, and we make our communication clear. People are craving to be led. So he gave the examples of saying, I hate how you're having to suffer from blank. right? I care about you and I can get you out of this situation. These are just the two that he brought up as examples verbally on his podcast, but I thought these are great. These are great sentences to wrap up a post. If you're writing a post about a villain, if you're writing a post about helping people avoid negative addictions or how to help them avoid being persuaded by modern day marketing, and you end that post with, I care about you and I can get you out of this situation, or I care about you and I can teach you how to know better, right? That is how we become the guide. That's how we shift that post from just being an educational post to putting us in the position of being the guide. So I want you to look back at that post that we just did in step 4 or 5, and I want you to put an ending on it. You might have already, but I want you to put an ending on it that positions you as the guide, just like these examples. Okay, so just give you a couple minutes here, maybe just a sentence or two at the end of your post where you are the guide. Ready, set, go. All right. Okay, so during our little creative time where we were crafting a post, I wrote a post as if I were Sarah, because for whatever reason, when I started to write my own post, I could only think of Sarah just sharing her story. And so this could be 100% not even accurate. I don't know. So I'm claiming this as a writing major as being a fiction piece. So Sarah will have to identify whether this is nonfiction or not. But this is an example of what I mean, and it's not the best possible thing. This is just an example of a post, right? If I had been there the night Amy OD'd, I don't even know if that's who it is, I wouldn't have my son. I wouldn't have Colin. I wouldn't be where I am today. Heck, I wouldn't even be alive. I probably would have OD'd right alongside her. I'm so thankful every day that I wasn't there, that I was spared and given new hope, and that just weeks later, I made the decision to trade my addiction to drugs for an addiction to fitness. And so I'll keep posting about my workouts, my shakes, and my tribe, because it saved my life. If you're dealing with unhealthy addictions, know this, sweet friend. I've been where you are, and while it may not be easy, your future life is counting on it, and it is so worth living for. I hope that's an example of emotional language that connects, of agitating a problem, right? Of using detail to connect with people and to present yourself as someone who's been there and can guide the old you or someone like the old you to a better ending. So that is, I think, oh no, there's another step. Okay, so the last thing, and I think this is it, and I have a couple examples to show you before we sign off. So number 7, decide whether or not you want to include a photo with your picture. I know that recently they've come out on Facebook, especially saying, that like just text posts are typically more, I think they get seen more in the news feed. Obviously for a picture like that, or for if I was Sarah and I was making that post, I'd probably include a picture of me with my family, since that's kind of the idea behind the post. But pick a photo if you're gonna roll with a photo. If you're using Instagram, make sure you're picking a picture that corresponds and that sparks somebody to maybe stop and read your story. The other thing that I'll tell you is the spacing. I know it's not 100% crucial that you have appropriate spacing with your posts, but by breaking up the visual of your post, so that people can read it easier, so it's not just one lump paragraph, will probably increase the readership as well. Does that make sense? So like what it says, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have like the way I would have written that out is I would have done line by line to grab attention, as opposed to just writing everything in a paragraph. So that's just a small tip. Okay, so remember, our job at the end of the day is to make others fall in love with us and to trust us. When we begin to name villains, when we begin to name their villains and name the problems that they have, which are most likely problems that we've dealt with ourselves, this can often be met at first with a negative attitude. So there could be people that are like, I guarantee I will have somebody who I have agitated tonight when I posted about McDonald's. It will happen. But when I see that, I know that it's because I've done something right. I've agitated the problem, right? So that's how I want you to think about this. Instead of being like, oh, I'm getting all these haters, or I'm nervous to post this, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Just know that you're doing it in a professional way. If you're doing it because you're passionate about this and you really want to help them get from where they are to where they could be, you're going to have that happen. So this is a cool picture of the Storybrand framework that we just walked through, which is the Donald Miller experience that I just walked you through. So if you want to take a picture of this, you can, or I can post it in the team page too. But this is basically just an overview of following this framework, right? Identifying your character, which is your avatar, identifying the problems that they have, choosing one problem to showcase in your story or in your post, identifying yourself as the guide who understands their fear or understands their problem, how you can offer them a plan, and then that call to action. Okay, so hopefully that's just, some people are more visual learners, so if that graphic is helpful to you, perfect. So I always like to give you guys some additional resources. Bo Eason is a really great resource on the power of story. I know Christine Dwyer has trained under him. He has been sort of her guide, I guess you could say, in the realm of storytelling. And so she has done some podcasts on the Platinum Edge podcast way back when, and those are great podcasts to tune into. Like I said, Donald Miller, the Storybrand podcast, these episodes that I used to create this tonight that I learned from that really got me hooked on him. I think I have it written down somewhere. I think it's like podcast numbers. Let me look real quick. Like I think it's 130, the 3-part series, like 130, 131, and 132. Those are the particular episodes. Seth Godin is like the marketing genius. He writes in a lot of parable form. He's got a lot of good marketing books about storytelling. And then even Jonah Berger with the book Contagious. Okay, so I gave some examples. I know we're running really short on time, but I gave some examples of this. I think that me offering you just this example that we just did in a moment with Sarah was a great idea for you to spark some creativity in yourself. But I do think let me go back here. Can I copy and paste this? I don't think I can. What I'll do is I will put, when I share this recording, I will link these 3 posts. I mean, I guess I could show them to you. One of them is mine, or 2 of them might be mine. Yeah, so this is a way that I featured Jennifer on my social. I wanted to tell a story, just her story of the last few weeks of kind of how things have panned out for her with her journey with coaching. My purpose here, right, is to sort of identify a problem, meaning job loss for people. Lack of job security was the problem that I'm addressing in this post. Presenting myself as the guide, as a mentor that can help her navigate and succeed with coaching. So this is just an example of a post that I made recently where I used this framework for myself. I think I have a couple other really quick examples too. This one is, I don't know if this is mine or Jennifer's. Oh yeah, this was a post that I made about my hormones. Everybody wants to hear about my hormones. I don't know why the text isn't coming out, but that's weird. Anyway, in this, I identified a problem, or I agitated a problem with women that most women aren't aware of, which is like hormone imbalance. So if you want to check that out, this is the picture that goes along with that post. You can find it on my Facebook page. I know we have another call to hop onto here. And then I think I have one of Jennifer's saved, but I must not have hyperlinked it, so that's cool. But Jennifer Tunney's done a great job. This is how this whole podcast came about, because last week when she presented, we talked about how she's really shifted her language on her social media to be very similar to this, where she's positioned herself as the guide. So she uses a lot of language like, hey, sweet friend, I'm cheering for you, or hey, sweet friend, if you're dealing with infertility, XYZ, right? So she's got lots of examples on her social where she has begun to present herself as the guide versus the hero of her own story. So I'm sorry this didn't hyperlink right, but you could check out her social as well. So, all right, cool. So if you feel confident with the story that you wrote tonight, even if you don't feel confident, right? Like you don't know until you start. If I wouldn't have been put into a 7th or 8th grade gifted and talented writing class to write about a bowl of grapes for 52 minutes, it wouldn't have started my skill set development in this area, right? And guess what? At the end of that class, I had to read what I wrote to the whole class. So that's what I'm asking you to do now, right? Like it's not going to be perfect. You're never going to have the perfect post to share. But the idea is that as you do it, you're going to get better at it. And it takes practice, right? So whatever it is that you started writing tonight, or if you have a different idea and you want to use this framework, my challenge for you is to put that pen to paper, or type it out on your Facebook and share it. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to make a quick post in the team page. And if you guys do post on your social media tonight with your story that you're sharing, I would love for you to put your link below my post so that we can all go love on each other's posts, right? So that we can comment on them, help boost the algorithm for each other. So I will see the Leaders United people on the next call, but I would normally take questions from you guys, but we have another call to hop onto. So if anybody has any questions at all about the Storybrand framework, please let me know. Check out those podcasts, walk through this again even, right? And do the activity over again and just keep practicing. I promise you'll connect with people regardless of whether it's a perfect story or not. Okay? All right, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in.